So this is going to be a tough one to bring any kind of objectivity to, because I'll tell you right now, I'm a huge Thundertron fan. His original Prime figure has long been one of my favorites, just because he's so unique within that line, and he's a pretty unique looking character within Transformers in general. So when we found out that we were going to be getting this later class Capsule Star Raiders version, it was real early on in the piece, and it was difficult for me not to pick up the regular Voyager, but I'm glad I waited, because we get all these pack-ins, and we get a new head sculpt, and finally, I got Thundertron on deck. When the existence of this leader class listing was leaked, I think we all knew that they weren't going to be doing 2 Thundertron figures, so obviously this is going to be a Voyager with some pack-ins, which is what it has ultimately become. I know that this practice is very controversial and frowned upon to some, but honestly, I don't mind it at all. I think it's really cool the way they did it with the Coronation Starscream set, that we got extra accessories to build out your world. That kind of those sort of world building accessories is something we don't often get from Transformers, so anytime they want to do it, I'm more than happy to get on board. What I had kind of hoped is that it might have been some, pack-out weaponry or, transforming space pirate specific accessories. But a core, a deluxe, and a Voyager for the price of a leader, I'm okay with it. This isn't what I expected, but I'm certainly not disappointed. So whilst the bulk of my attention is going to be on Thundertron, let's take a moment to appreciate his pack-in pals, Calcitron and Nightstrike. Nice to meet you. Calcius Crumb over here is the 3rd time out for the Igneous mold. The only remolding here, unlike Nucleus, is just his head, which you gotta admit is bringing some big Saturday morning cartoon goon energy. He looks like the Scooby Gang's just about to pull off that mask to reveal that it was Old Man McGucket all along. I do really like the asymmetrical abomination that is this face sculpt. I also think it was a great choice to have that red peering out from behind there. I think one of the best things about him though is how hard they've gone on his color scheme. His gradiated paint job from the frosted whites through to those metallic icy blues works so well. It looks the best on his chest plate, but it's still evident on the rocky outcroppings of his arms and on his legs as well. The whole thing comes together to make him much more unique and memorable than he probably has any right to be. If you're wanting to get more into the nitty-gritty of this icy goon, I would check out my Magnius versus Nucleus video, because that goes through transformation, articulation, all that jazz. I'll chuck a link to that one up there. Nightstrike, on the other hand, is just a repainted Ratbat, which, his color scheme also works quite well. The black I like. I would have thought they'd have gone for more of a, that same blue that you see on Thundertron to make him match more, but I'm not mad at the point of difference, right? He's his own bat. I do think the most impressive thing about him, though, is look at that tiny Star Raiders Tampo faction logo. That is so small and so crisp. I couldn't find Ratbat for a comparison, but here he is alongside Double Dealer's Batgoon. Now, as for Thundertron himself, he looks amazing. He has gravitas, he has style, he has flair. He was there. That's how he became the captain. In terms of differences from the regular release, it's a whole new head sculpt, which is designed to look much more like his original version, which I love. Also, he's doing his best Odin impression by having one of his eyes locked away and missing a hand. The hook is pretty blunt, which I get because it's a kid's toy. It looks more like a donut with a bite taken out of it. I would have liked something a little more stylized. But it obviously can't take up more space than his regular hand. Super strange is that hand doesn't actually go all the way through. That's something you don't really see very often. Aside from those details, I am loving this deco. The cool blue that makes up so much of his body and the gunmetal grey look really good together. The white is nice and sharp, and I'm glad they went for a flat white rather than that pearlescent white that they often do, because then that just makes the metallic accents from the blue and the gold just really sing, and also makes for a nice point of difference between his faceplate and his beard. I know some people hate Transformers with facial hair, but, you know, I see it as he could be really damaged, and that's just kind of like, you know, the wiring that made up his bottom jaw potentially. Or, given they're out in space, maybe it makes for a good debris filter from his inner workings and mechanisms. Who can say? I gotta say though, deco-wise, as much as I love this piratey mug, I do think it might have been worth picking out the eye patch in the gold, or at least hitting it with the same metallics as his beard, because until I saw the box art, I hadn't even realized that that was part of the sculpt. I do love all of his piratey swagger. I think, like, you know, the coattails look great. He's very light on kibble. I like the cable-y aspects that they've pulled all the way through. I also like that the battle damage isn't necessarily picked out in paint, but he does have a lot of asymmetrical battle damagey elements where he's clearly been through his share of scrapes. In terms of articulation, all of this piratey flair does have some impact on how freely he can move, but it's not as egregious as some would have you believe. His head is on a ball joint. It's a pretty tight one, and it is a little bit limited by the beard, but that's beard life for you. His shoulder pauldrons swivel around a little bit, so as you move that arm around, obviously he can't get all the way around, but who can, right? Who can? You can still get quite far up because they will move out of the way to accommodate that arm coming up. He has a bicep swivel at the elbow, which, because of the sculpt of his, you know, his braces, you do kind of lose that a little bit sometimes. So you kind of want to, a lot of the time, pivot that before you bend the elbow. The elbow itself comes past a 90, which is nice. And then he has wrist swivel, which is hindered a little bit by his, you know, knuckle dusters, but not hugely. These hip skirts are on a bowl joint, so they will get out the way as much as you need them to. The tails of his tucks, they are a little bit articulated and they can get out the way a little bit. It does kind of untransform him partially as you move them out the way to try and have him kick back. But otherwise, universal at the hips. He's got a thigh swivel which is sculpted around his boxer briefs, which I like. Well past 90 knees. Forward and back on that foot, but not a particularly generous tilt. It does have waist articulation, but all of his affectations limit it. But it's there, and you get a pretty good twist out of it. I feel like strength more than dexterity is his primary stat. His coattails are kind of a little bit prone to popping off, which isn't the end of the world, and it's clearly designed to do so. Something I sort of wish they'd done is allowed a way to put that onto his arm as like a shield bracer. That seems like a missed opportunity to me. But he can throw all the high wheeling, big punching, piratey poses that you're going to need him to. I've seen other bots do way less with a way more unencumbered frame. In terms of accessories, he comes with this really cool stylized looking pirate cutlass and his foot, which can be his foot. That way, if you're not digging the peg leg vibe, you can go ahead and give him 2 feet. So unlike his original version, the foot no longer attaches to the wrist to give him those cat claw gauntlets, but he comes with those, you know, baked in. So that's a win. What you can now do with the foot, however, is attach it to his sword for like a extra armored up sword, Power Rangers style. It might seem a little superfluous to need, but in my headcanon, with his like electricity Thundertron-y powers, attaching the foot to the sword lets him electrify the blade. They have made his hook 5mm port compatible, so he can hold the sword in either hand. It's a vibe. I'm really digging the sword. I like it a lot. Cool looking sword. I do think at this price point it would have been nice if they could have splashed some of that metallic silver just along the front edge of it. Would have made it that extra degree more imposing. But that is splitting hairs. What I also really like about the sword is you get a couple of different options in terms of weapon storage. So it has a tab where if you want to, you can come around to that coattails section and it will peg on there. What I also like is the hip skirts have this little slot here, which just so happens to be the same size as the notch on the blade. That way, if you wanted him to, he can also wear it at his hip. Again, also quite a cool look. So it's also probably not unreasonable to consider his pack-in figures as accessories to some respect, because they do integrate with him in some fun ways. So Nightstrike, if we take him first, given that he's, you know, a siege mold, he still has that siege port. So if you wanted to, you can go ahead and tab him in onto his waistcoat, and then it's like he's got him as like a satchel, which is fun narrative-wise, because then it's like, you know, he's just walking around, someone's taking him in somewhere, and it's like, you know, none of your tricks, Thundertron. And then as he's, you know, walking through a facility, you can just drop him, and then next minute, you've got Nightstrike off, you know, scoping the place out. and then can come and report back later on his findings once he works out where the, the treasury or the armory or whatever they've come to knock off is. And then I'm really not sure if this is a feature on the original release or not, but his shoulder pauldrons are actually asymmetrical here. So you've got, a siege port on that shoulder, but on this one you've got these two rectangular ports which line up perfectly to Nightstrike's feet. I love that feature. How far does that go to completing his pirate aspect, right? What pirate captain is not complete without, well, normally a parrot, but a robo bat will do. Then, if we go ahead and get Calcitron in on the scene, he can obviously come apart to do his arm riser thing, as is the custom of his people. Like I said in my other video looking at these guys, as a play pattern, I do think this has been getting progressively lazier as more and more of your, actual base robot is just left sitting there at the end. Remember how phenomenal Cog and 6-gun were? This is a lot of robot to be left over for not a huge amount of armorizing parts. Thundertron's tail is cold. Fearsome crew of misfits brave. Across the void their ship does sail. Galaxies quiver, scream of dread. Star rays paint the cosmos red. Fleets of war they can't deter. Thundertron's voice a thunderous roar. Oh, Star Raiders claim the stars. Thundertron our space star. Oh, Star Raiders none shall stand. Under ocean, starlit sand. This captain leads with might. Neon glows his eyes at night. Through the dark of endless space, Thundertron's reign takes its place. Clouds of steel his crew soar, endless thunder craving more. There we go, so now I guess he has some pieces of ice on him and a large hammer. In terms of a powered up mode, it's as close as you can get to sort of nothing without it actually being nothing. But, maybe this adds ice powers to his loadout. I don't know. It's a thing you can do. I don't hate it, but I gotta say, this is still way too much robot to be left over with. What am I meant to do? Put him in my drink to cool it down? I mean, look, this still works for me. Any armoring up feature, I think, is a cool one. I love the siege ports. The whole thing's a vibe. It looks particularly good in his wrists and his waist and stuff. I just really wish that, these rock lords came apart to be a bit more. Imagine if you could somehow, incorporate some of that onto his chest or something as well. Like if this came apart to add some chest armor. It'd just make it a much stronger play feature, wouldn't it? Alright, so given that this is only the second time out in the Plastic Fantastic for Thundertron, it makes comparison time pretty easy. So straight off the bat, whilst it's clear that they're the same dude, I think this is one of those cases where the figure in your mind's eye stands up much better than it does when it's actually in hand. Because I remember seeing the new Thundertron and being like, is that really that different? Have they really improved upon anything from the original? And they have. Yeah, they have. They really have. I love this original Thundertron, and there's still so much here to like, but the new one just has so much more presence, so much gravitas. It's a kind of a reasonably sort of faithful reimagining of the character. There is quite a bit that's different. You still get like a lot of the same flair through the main body they've carried through. You don't get the, tiger vomit codpiece that you get on the original. Also, the main thing that I think is lacking from the new one is the tiger claw shoulder pauldrons, because they slap. They go real hard. But everything else is pretty similar. Admittedly, the peg leg on the new one is not as stylized and crab clawy as the original guy's peg leg, and no longer does it double as like cat knuckles, which was a really fun feature, but I'm happy to have the permanent faux cat claws and have the false foot arm up the sword. The swords also actually are radically different. I can't be the only one, in fact, I guarantee I'm not the only one who hated this Transformers Prime Voyager gimmick of the motorized sword action. Just, all of those weapons were awful. None of them worked. But the blade is actually much more similar than what I thought it was, like down to the nooks and notches and surface details and stuff, so that's actually pretty cool of them. The way the foot works on the new guy to power up the sword is actually a little bit more of an homage than I sort of thought it was to the original sword. Another nifty little tidbit. His waistcoat elements on the new one are much more piratey than Zoidsy. He always gave me big like Blade Liger energy on the original with that accoutrement. I do kind of miss as well the see-through elements of the original, but then at the same time, not really. And the updated head sculpt, to my eyes, looks much more imposing and less like a Pokemon. Now, given that he's by no means a particularly new figure, I'm not going to go into all the nitty-gritty on the transformation, but while I take care of this transformation into line mode, take a beat and be regaled by tales from the high seas.
Stars ignite, Thundertron commands, galactic seas, ironclad hands. Fearless crew, the Star Raiders scream, plunder and pillage, cosmic dream. Nebulae part, on our course, plasma sails, a fearsome force. Hear the cry, thunder's roar, we transverse cosmic war. Thundertron, master of night, stars tremble at our sight. Raider crew, fierce and wild, galactic terror, freedom's child. Black holes gape, planets quake, under Thundertron space will break. Loot and ravage, endless spree, galactic pirates, eternally free. Asteroids fly, cannon fire, metallic fury, our desire. Star Raiders chant, loud and clear, interstellar conquest driven by fear. Thundertron, master of night, stars tremble at our sight. Raider crew, fierce and wild, galactic terror, freedom's child. Thundertron, master of night, stars tremble at our sight. Raider crew, fierce and wild, galactic terror, freedom's child.
Alright, look, let's be real. Lion formers, never particularly good, are they? Like, they have a mass similar to a person, but that mass has to shift about a lot to become a convincing looking lion. Thundertron here has the benefit of being a robotic-y lion, and he's an alien. So, you know, it's just a feline-esque alt mode. I have always liked the Zoids flavor that he's bringing to the table. I do always find it odd how lately with like lion-y modes and stuff, they want you to tab in the arms to limit that range of movement, and it's really not required with this guy because he'll stand by himself and you're just limiting the reach that he has, but this is what they would have you do. I actually think his profile, like how meaty he is through the torso compared to the back, is quite cool. I like how streamlined he is. I even like the sort of the broadness that you get from the front. The mane doesn't really seem like much of a mane, but I'm okay with it because he's an alien robot cat, and I dig the fact that he actually has sharp teeth to go with his Voltron mouth. Even though there are some doofy aspects to this, he still looks imposing. Lio Convoy, he ain't. And even if you're not a huge fan of his, if we go ahead and get him in with the original, he's nothing but huge improvement. Like, that is hard to look at. No one could say that this is a better lion mode than this is. The original in this mode looks like he's come straight from a bad taxidermy page. Not a fan. This, I actually like. It took a while to get him there, but it's cool. He's got, you know, lightning stripes and cables, and it works. It works for me. So look, through the duration, if it hasn't already become abundantly clear, I back Thundertron. Big Thundertron fan. Should you get him? Yeah, I reckon. I got him. I love him. What do you think? How do we feel about these leader class with, you know, smaller tier pack-ins? I don't mind it. I don't know if it's something I want to see happen all the time, but like as a, you know, a sneaky second release for figures, I think it's a cool way to get in some extra bits and pieces. Thank you so much for watching. hit me up in the comments below. If you had a good time, like and subscribe. That'd be great. I'd appreciate it. If you already have, way to go, you little legend. So until the next one, let's get nerdy with it.